Dean Corall. Let's meet Dean Corall, who was responsible for abducting, torturing and murdering at least 28 teenage boys and young men, terrorizing Houston, Texas between 1970 and 1973. Corall attained the creepy nickname Candyman because he and his family had owned and operated a candy factory, and Corall lured some of his victims with free candy. Corall had two teenage accomplices on hand, David Owen Brooks and Elmer Wayne Henley. The duo would earn $200 each for every boy they delivered, many of whom were friends of Brooks and Henley. Once Corall had killed the boy through strangulation or using his .22 caliber pistol, they would assist with burying the bodies. It's pretty savage that these guys were casually sending so many young men to their deaths for a measly $200. The usual method of garnering victims typically involved offering a boy a lift to a party or other address. They would then be abducted and restrained on Corall's torture board, where they would be subjected to grotesque acts of cruelty. Now, before I continue, if you're eating anything right now, I would advise you to stop, because the description of his torture method that I'm about to tell you is beyond horrific and graphical. Corall's favorite methods of torture were pulling out the boy's individual pubic hair and inserting a glass rod into the boy's urethra and snapping the end right off. He would also starve the boys and repeatedly rape them over a period of days. Corall was never brought in front of a jury, as he was fatally shot by Henley, one of his accomplices, before his crime could come to light. Now, on the one hand, that's very frustrating, as he arguably never had to face justice for his horrific crimes. But on the other hand, it likely saved a lot of other people falling prey to Corall's depraved mind. In 2012, this photo was found showing a young boy scared, wearing handcuffs, and looking up at the camera. It is believed that this photograph depicts a 29th victim of Corall's. What a nasty piece of work this guy was. It's safe to say, if he hadn't been shot by Henley, he'd have continued to slaughter innocent boys and young men while his Henley and Brooks collected their blood money. Asunta Bastera. Asunta Bastera was a 12-year-old girl who was adopted from China by lawyer Rosario Porto Ortega and Alfonso Bastera Camporo, a wealthy couple in high standing. Her adoptive Spanish family reported her missing on the evening of 21st of September 2013. Her body was found a few hours later on a forest trail. The couple were found guilty of drugging Asunta with the sedative Orfidol periodically for 3 months before finally suffocating her. The motive was money, as Asunta was due to inherit valuable real estate from her grandparents. This image shows Asunta drugged and wrapped in a blanket. It is one of the last photographs taken of Asunta before she was killed by her adoptive parents. This is such an upsetting case. It's always hard to contemplate what could compel parents to kill their child. Irrespective of the fact Asunta was adopted, it is crazy to think these two killed their daughter over something as material as money, especially as they were already a wealthy couple themselves. In terms of sentencing, the couple were both sentenced to 18 years in prison for the murder of Asunta. Madison Jamison. Madison Jamison and her entire family disappeared on 8th of October 2009 from their family home in Oklahoma. The family pickup truck was found abandoned an hour away, with personal belongings such as ID, a purse and wallet found inside. $32,000 in cash was also found in the car, which led some to speculate drugs were involved. A mobile phone found in the car contained this picture of Madison, which was taken by a rock nearby. The case went cold until the family's remains were found on the 16th of November 2013, and this photograph is believed to have been taken by the unidentified killer. Although there is no proof, police support this theory, and Madison's aunt, upon viewing the photo, claimed Madison looks to be distressed and perhaps looking towards her parents. This picture raises so many questions. For example, if the family were murdered, why would the killer take this photograph of Madison? There is also a theory that the father murdered the family and then himself, but again, if that were the case, why would he take this picture of Madison if he knew he wasn't going to be around to look at it? Regardless, this case remains unsolved. First crime scene photo. Forensic photography, or the practice of taking photos at the scene of a crime, has been around for over a century. One of the first famous crime scene photos was taken on May the 5th of 1903 in the home of a Parisian lady named Madame Jamison, who had been murdered. As investigators descended upon the apartment, one of them picked up a camera and photographed the scene. The photographer focused on a few key details, like a tilted painting on the wall, disheveled bed linens, and overturned chairs. Even more importantly, he captured the body of Madame Jamison, sprawled on the floor by the side of her bed, her limbs bent at unnatural angles, the tips of her extremities darkening, showing hours had passed since she had been killed. At the time, the camera was still a relatively novel invention used mostly for posed portraits. It was certainly not used to capture something as horrifying as dead bodies. And yet, it was rapidly discovered that these photos, as unsettling as they were incredibly useful when it came to investigating a crime. Investigators did their best to take notes and details of the scene, but certain aspects went unnoticed or were eventually forgotten. Photography fixed these shortcomings. After the scene was cleaned up, any visual evidence was cleaned up with it. But with photos, the scene could be revisited time and time again, allowing new sets of eyes to pick out new details.